Hey guys, welcome back. It's Danielle, and today's topic is called I Got the Meat Sweats. Kind of an interesting topic that I've always kind of just thought about, and you get in conversations with people about the health benefits or the not so health benefits of meat consumption, right? And I think it was truly important to just delve further into this. What does the evidence say? What does governmental agencies say? What do other agencies say in regards to meat consumption and really your overall health? And the reality is, I think a lot of people struggle with certain health issues, and you think about it, meat could play a big part in what's going on with your body and why maybe you're not able to get to the optimal health level that you potentially could, per se from a naturalistic approach. So let's delve a little further into the meat sweats. I'm going to clear my conscience. I am a vegetarian. I have been for about 14 years. It was truly out of kind of courteousness to a fellow roommate. And then I kind of started to learn more and educate myself about, what goes into the meat and how the animals are treated and kind of all of these other aspects of just having chicken with your meal or steak with your meal. And truly, I never looked back after I started kind of just getting more and more information. So let's be clear, this is not a meat bashing podcast. I have friends, family, my husband, my 2-year-old son. They consume meat. I'm very picky and choosy about certain meats that they do consume, or at least I try to be. Not, again, you can't be all the time, but I would say probably 98% of the time I'm making sure that, what he's eating or what is being consumed, my husband and my son are good, healthy meats, right? From good, reputable sources. So, I'm not here to bash people who do eat meat, but I do want to provide the evidence and explore more about how meat can affect your health, including the benefits and not so good benefits of meat consumption. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to throw in some environmental tidbits in there just because hippies like the environment. So the original book really that started it all, it was called Skinny Bitch. And Skinny Bitch, they're savage. The two authors in there, two females, nutritionists, I believe, they're savage in there. They seriously let it rip in regards to just kind of how they talk in the book, but it's supposed to be fun, right? It's supposed to be looking at something in a way you've never looked at it before, but actually looking at the data and the numbers to show what meat consumption does, not only to your body, but the environment, the world, and what the animals are going through. And the reality is, Americans eat twice as much protein than we really need. There has been a direct link between meat consumption and obesity, diabetes, cancer, in general. That's not kind of a question mark. There is, I wouldn't say a causation, but definitely a correlation between the two. And, eating large amounts of animal protein, which means technically most likely eating less vegetables, equates to less fiber, more work for the kidneys and liver. This protein that you're eating from the meat, once it's broken down, the kidneys ultimately have to excrete this protein as urea. And if you get lab values, if you get a CMP or a BMP, a lot of times there's a BUN lab value in there. That's the urea. And that's what really the kidneys have to excrete out after, some type of amino acid ingestion or, protein ingestion. And if you think about it, this can be bad for people who already have a diabetic issue or a pre-diabetic issue. You're asking the kidneys, or kidney problems in general, you're asking the kidneys to do more work when they're already kind of man, I'm trying to work as hard as I can, and the meat consumption just keeps kind of asking for more and more and more. And truthfully, looking at one of the journals, New England Journal of Medicine, right, a very reputable journal, and the Journal of Clinical Nutrition actually found that people who do eat meat 3 times per week gained more weight than people who avoided meat and consumed more vegetables. Well, okay, kind of duh, right? If you're eating more fruits and vegetables, They tend to be less in, caloric intake and things of that nature. But I think there's something to be said about that, just simply in regards to just looking at meat alone. These are reputable journals that are saying, listen, just so you know, if you're consciously consuming, meat 3 times per week, you're going to gain more weight than someone who doesn't eat meat 3 times per week. And I think it's important to look at, when I was talking about the kidneys, like the actual breakdown of the protein. So you consume the protein, right? The hydrochloric acid in your stomach then breaks that down. It uses like pepsin to kind of dismantle the protein. And this can take longer than, say, like fats or carbs. I mean, meat, a good hunk of meat. Think about breaking down a good fibrous, protein type of meat. So it's not rocket science that you're like, oh, I feel fuller after eating, a meat-based meal. But the pepsin works to kind of break all this meat down, right? All this protein down. The small intestines then see this is where the majority of the digestion occurs, and there's more enzymes that kind of come in and start breaking down the protein into what we call amino acids, which are then, kind of going through the small intestine, and they eventually will get kind of dispersed into the bloodstream, which to do this, you need what we call ATP or energy. So your body is using energy, lots and lots of energy to break this meat consumption down, more so than what it would be for like fruits, vegetables, grains, even carbs, things of that nature. So once the amino acids or those small little particles that are from the protein are broken down into the bloodstream, it goes to the liver. And the liver is kind of like a checkpoint, right? It's kind of like a spot where it's like, okay, where can I distribute these amino acids or these small itty bitty tiny protein molecules where the body needs them best? And remember that these amino acids, these small itty bitty proteins, they contain nitrogen. That's what kind of makes them all up. And breakdown of the amino acids releases like nitrogen containing ammonia. Well, ammonia, too much ammonia, can be toxic. It can be hard on the system, right? So the liver works to transform this ammonia into urea, which is then transported to the kidneys and then excreted in the urine. So again, that's where the urea comes from, into the kidneys, and how the liver and kidney kind of communicate and have to work that much more harder when you're consuming, meat products in itself. So one thing that I thought was interesting was they said that like little protein makes it actually to the big part of the colon, right? The part where the actual like poop is starting, like what you think of as poop is starting to like develop and come around the bend here, to go bye-bye. But little protein is actually made to the large intestine if you're not eating excessive amounts. If you're eating a crap ton of meat, you're going to have smelly farts. If you're having smelly farts, that means you're eating way too much protein, because the excess is getting to the colon where the microbes basically are digesting this kind of rotted meat, if per se, and it's producing this smelly gas. So one of those concepts, if you're starting to have, not all farts smell great, let's be honest. But if you're like a legit, like clearing a room every single time, you eating too much meat, okay? You need to back off, because your body is telling you the small intestine couldn't break it all down. Some made it to the large intestine, and you have stinker butt, okay? Now, the bulk of this video was what's really in the meat. What are you putting in your body? Well, we talked about the amino acids, right? The building blocks of protein and muscle. But what is being injected, I guess I should say, in the farm animal before you actually consume it? We all know this. We talk about antibiotics, right? Antibiotics, steroids, growth hormones, all the things. Well, it's true. Antibiotics, most factory farmed animals live in their own poo, pee, vomit. They get sores. That is their life. And the antibiotics are there to actually prevent the animals from dying of infectious process. So it kind of makes sense, right? No cows, no money. So the farmers have to sit there and go, okay, well, I want to give them prophylactically, even just prophylactically. There may be no, ouchies that they have, or sores, or they may not be ill or sick or what have you. They're prophylactically, just presumptively giving these animals antibiotics to prevent any of these issues because they sit in pee, poo, vomit, kind of conditions that are not as sanitary as we would like to imagine and think they are. What's interesting is half of the antibiotics made in the US are actually for farm animals. They're not for us, which is wild to think about, right? Me, even in healthcare, I'm like, I dish out a lot of antibiotics. I try not to. I try to be a good antibiotic stewardship. My attendings, my pharmacists, they're all great at being like, well, we technically should limit antibiotic use for this and da-da-da. But we just throw them at the farm animals, at these factory farm animals. We don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. So we eat the meat directly. We eat the antibiotics. We develop the resistance to what I call the buggies, right? The buggies. It's the infections. And it makes perfect sense, though. I mean, you keep giving these animals antibiotics, and these bugs are smarter than us. My husband gets so sick of me saying, these bugs that have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, viruses, bacteria, fungi, all of these bugs, they're smarter than us. They know how to adapt, right? They know how to survive. And if we're giving animals that we consume something that these bugs can sit there and go, well, I've seen that antibiotic for over a year and a half, 2 years that this animal's been growing, and you've now consumed it, you've consumed the meat with the antibiotic resistance in it. The next time you show up for an infection, these bugs are going to go, yeah, right, that simple antibiotic is not going to work for you. So then me, being a provider, I have to give you a heavier hitter antibiotic, right? I have to go above that and above that. I mean, to me, I see it every day. I see young people. I'm not talking people in their 80s, 90s, 100s, whatever, that are like, oh, you've been around for a long time. I'm seeing the antibiotic resistance. No, I'm seeing 20, 30, 40-year-olds coming in with bugs. Half the time I can't pronounce the name because it's just, the bugs are so wild. And then literally we look at the sensitivities and see what antibiotic would be sensitive to the bug, and we're at a loss because these bugs outsmarted us. So you need to think about, again, the consumption aspect of it. You're consuming this maybe every day, every meal, small amounts of these antibiotics, which ultimately they're going to create a problem. Whether you want to believe it or not, they're going to create a huge problem the next time you get sick. And I know that's like futuristic way of thinking, but if we haven't seen anything from a pandemic that we just went through, futuristic thinking is how we need to be thinking. Instead of reactive, we need to be proactive. And this is just one way conceptually that you can think about that. Now, let's talk about, and I'm not going to delve like huge into it, but like, organochlorine and insecticides and all the things. BHC, DDT, dioxin, HCB. I Googled all of these names. Half of them, like I said, I can't even pronounce these. Woof. This is bad. These are bad insecticides. I mean, they're killing the pests, but they're also causing like nerve system dysfunction in humans. A lot of these chemicals we use like for killing lice, scabies, treatment, things like that. That's wild. That we would be like, yeah, I'll eat it. I'll consume it. It's fine. And I'm not just talking, I guess, meats in general, because all agriculture uses this, right? All even vegetables and fruits and things like that. So we need to be cognizant of all of it. But the reality is the meat products actually do contain about 5 times greater pesticides than plant proteins. I mean, that's the reality of it. So, you're looking at, and this came from the FDA. They did their own study. They showed bacon had about 48 different pesticides in it. Lunch meat was about 102. Fast food hamburger was like 113. And I think hot dogs were like 123. So I guess putting into perspective where, let's say I said, listen, I'm going to make you a nice meal. And it's all going to be free range chicken and vegetables and all the things. But I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of pesticides in it. Would you still eat it? That's kind of a question you need to think about, right? Like, would you still eat it? Or I'm going to give you a supplemental pill. It's going to taste great, just like meat. Nice big steak. It's going to taste fabulous. But this supplement pill in it has itty bits of pesticide in it. And I'm going to give it to you every single meal for years and years and years and years and years. Would the meat, it tastes great. The supplement tastes great. This pill tastes great. Would you still eat it? That's kind of like, I guess, outside the box thinking that I'm just, again, it's a complete fabrication and ridiculous to think about. But when you're eating these factory farmed animals, it's not ridiculous to think about because that's what you're doing. You're just not taking it in pill form. You're actually eating it just in the food. So, just, again, food for thought. See what I did there? And then finally, steroids, growth hormones. Again, this is something we've known for years and years and years that, the bigger the animal, the more money for the meat or the more money for meat. There are some FDA approved hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. These are all considered kind of natural hormones per them. But just remember you're ingesting them. So this is extra kind of hormonal stuff that's being put in your body. So if, being male and female, we all have some estrogen, we all have some testosterone, type aspect of hormones in our body. But being a female, you might see more of the testosterone side effects. If meat consumption, being a male, you might see more of the estrogen type side effects of, issues. Like I said, increased body hair, acne, voice changes, hair loss, suppression of natural testosterone, gynecomastia in men, suppression of good cholesterol, increasing prostaglandins, which we know cause like inflammation. These are all things that you're consuming. And the scary part is too, we give this to young kids and then we sit here and we go, well, the doctor said my kid was a little chunky or, teetering on a little bit of obesity. And we sit here and go, man, like he's an active kid or she's an active kid. What's going on? We're giving our kids foods that are just pumped full of growth hormones. We shouldn't be shocked. Like we shouldn't be shocked at all. So again, just more knowledge of knowing the actual consumption of what's in the animal and then what you actually eat. And I have to plug this in here just because this is what gets me passionate as well, is thinking about how the animals were treated in these conditions, right? Like, again, a pig, a cow, a chicken. Let's say you go to the farm and you look at them and you're like, yeah, that looks like a good, slaughterhouses exist where you can go and pick your own animal and this, that, and the other. But let's say you go there and you see these factory farm animals and they're laying in pee and poo and they have sores on their udders and sores on their legs are broken because they can't stand. I know this is like graphic and like I said, a little savage, but I'm not making this up. Like this is legit. Would you sit there and pick out an animal and go, yeah, that one covered in poo with sores. I want that one. I'm going to eat that one. Like we've gotten so disconnected with where the meat came from and what happened to the animal before we eat it, that it's just like, it's kind of a no-brainer. Makes sense, right? I don't know. Just something to think about. Like I said, I'm not trying to be like dramatic here or anything, but I'm just thinking out loud. So everyone says, okay, fine. I won't eat the red meat. What about chicken and fish, right? Well, the American Journal of Epidemiology actually said eating chicken and fish is still linked to colon cancer, in lieu of red meat consumption as well. One of the studies, they actually followed about, I can't remember exactly how much. It was a decent amount of people for about 6 years. These people avoided red meat. Again, this is like very ambiguous, right? What does avoided mean? But they still ate white meat once a week. And lo and behold, the study shows that colon cancer risk was still about 55% higher in those than those that avoided any meat whatsoever. So you're still looking at a coin flip, right? Even if you're like, oh, I eat chicken and fish, I don't eat the red meat. You're still looking at a coin flip for a diagnosis of colon cancer, okay? There is that risk there. And then the National Cancer Institute actually found that grilled chicken had the highest carcinogens when the animal protein was heated up. So I don't know too many people that eat raw chicken. That'd be kind of different. Maybe you're out there. I don't know. But so you've got to heat up the chicken, right? Well, ultimately doing that, you're looking at some pretty high carcinogen chemicals. And then fish, we always knew fish with high levels of mercury, PCBs, and all the previous kind of pesticides that were mentioned previously. And this is like farm raised fish we're talking about. I'm not talking about you went out on, the coast and caught some saltwater fish. I'm talking about, farm raised. They've never actually seen like legit ocean or lakes or seas type thing. When we ingest the chemicals in our body, we're unable to release cholinesterase, which is actually a natural chemical for our neurological processes. So this is why we say when a female gets pregnant, we should limit or avoid fish products altogether, because that can ultimately lead into like fetal brain damage, infertility, things of that nature. So again, my outside the box question is, again, I'm not trying to be like annoying, but if we're telling pregnant women, hey, don't eat this because it can cause neurological issues and development, why would you eat it at all? Whether you're pregnant or not, male or female. Like, I guess that's the only point I'm trying to make, is just kind of think about it a little bit, right? Again, yes, it tastes great. It tastes delicious, right? But to what cost? Another point I wanted to talk about was just another book that I'd read early on when I started to become a vegetarian. The book was called Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And it was pretty cool, just in the essence of what you think of, your blood type actually being a genetic fingerprint that identifies your DNA. And I knew going in that I was A positive blood type. And I won't go through all of them just because the book itself, I truly think everyone should just kind of look through and read through. For me, it hit home like nail on the head. Holy crap, this was me in regards to my blood type. So me being type A, the book had said generally, and again, not everybody fits inside this box, but type A's flourish on like a vegetarian diet in their natural state. Biologically, type A's are predispositioned to have heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and we tend to store a lot of meat as fat simply because we have low stomach acid. And that also, like, dairy was poorly digested and things like that. I was like, mind blown, whoa, like this was me. I would eat meat and literally like 3 days later, I would still be so just bloated and full from eating meat because my body just couldn't digest it. It couldn't break it down. I would eat eggs and it was like, I knew I was in for a nightmare of a day, so for me, it made a lot of sense, kind of going through it. And truly, like I said, I won't go through all of them, but it just talked about each blood type, how type O is like the oldest type. Type A evolved really due to like cultivation of land. Type B blood type emerged when like humans migrated to colder, harsher territories. And then type AB was from like modern adaptation, which is cool. You kind of go back to your roots per se, right? On where you came from a genetic standpoint, and maybe what your body would prefer from that genetic kind of fingerprint. So pretty cool. So in general, again, I'm not bashing meat, but meat does do a lot of good things. It provides important source of protein. You're looking at micronutrients. You're looking at good source of iron, zinc, vitamin B. But these energy dense diets tend to be high in meat, fat, sugars. Then you add on top of that like a sedentary lifestyle. There's no doubt the epidemic of obesity and diet related chronic diseases are just going to flourish. Again, we've kind of known that. That's not new. That's not rocket science, right? You take in more and then don't give out any. There's more pluses than there are minuses. You're always going to be in the plus, and that plus is related to basically gaining weight and chronic disease processes. which we also have known, strong evidence suggesting that vegetarians actually may have lower risk of cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and some cancers. But I do want to make a point, low-fat, high-carbohydrate diets have not really wholly been positive or successful in reducing the burden of chronic disease within a general population. So, the research still shows that lean meat and fish can continue to be a part of the recommendation for a balanced, healthy diet, but not in the essence of putting a slab of meat the size of your head on every single plate for every single meal to be considered a balanced and healthy diet. And I think, or going to the fast food joint at least once a day, even once a week sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, the meat itself needs to be your small treat on the plate, and the rest needs to consume other plant-based, fruits, vegetables, quality grains, all of those things, right? We kind of already talked about cooking meat at high temperatures charring, other types of processing techniques like smoking, curing, salting. These add additional chemical preservatives and ultimately lead to the formation of carcinogenic compounds such as nitrates, which I'll talk in another podcast in regards to preservatives, additives, all those things. But you're looking at compounds that literally just turn carcinogen, cancer causing, just by kind of changing the way the meats are. Now, again, if once in a great while you turn on the smoker and you're smoking meats and want to have a great, good smoked meat meal, okay. But I'm talking every single night or every other night or what have you, where you're constantly using this modality or technique of processing meats. It's going to be no bueno. Eventually, from a chronic health standpoint, it's going to be not good. A lot of inflammation and oxidative stress have been linked to the intake of meat intake and disease risk. And again, red meat, possibly due just to the fat and the iron content, you're looking at increasing inflammation, oxidative stress, but less is really known in regarding the leaner white meats as well. So, and then obviously we've already talked about just how the most robust human evidence for red meat and processed meat intake is kind of the link, or the, like I said, the correlation with colorectal cancer. Not necessarily a causation, but there's a direct correlation within the research that's there. So now, real quick, I'm going to talk just super quick about the environment and what meat does to produce, issues for the environment, right? So meat really does produce more emissions per unit of energy compared to that of a plant-based food. And really energy is lost at kind of each trophic level. The meat production is the single most important source of methane, obviously. And, this has high relative global warming potential, but, without getting into the kind of the politics of what the methane does and CO2 and carbon emission and all this stuff. I mean, the reality is the meat production has a lot of carbon dioxide that is made from that. And we know, this isn't again a question mark, we know that that's bad for our environment alone. Agriculture uses more fresh water than any human activity. And I'm saying agriculture, I'm not just saying just the meats and just the cows and just the pigs and agriculture in general uses more fresh water than any human activity, but really a third of that is required for livestock. So now I am talking the meats, right? And we're looking at affecting the biodiversity of our land and our earth and our world. We convert this land to pasture-fed crops, and we cut down forests to create pastures to meet really the demand for animal feed. And it's just wild to me that what we're willing to do to the environment just to create more for ultimately kind of worsening health and chronic illness, and destroying the land, the soil, and the waste that we have. Like, I feel like our minds would be blown if we actually saw what was thrown out of grocery stores every single day in regards to just rotted meat or old products. And that, again, goes for vegetables as well. I'm not going to lie. But let's step back. Let's ask this one question. What if every American stopped eating meat for just one day every week for 1 year? That's it. One day, every single week for a year. So let's say your Meatless Monday, right? They had this plan of Meatless Mondays that was kind of started. Even if you don't care about animals, I do, but about 3.5 animals per person could be spared. That's 1.4 billion animals per year that just didn't have to die. It's kind of cool, right? But in essence, this would directly lower the emission of greenhouse gases. We know this. Okay, maybe you don't care about that aspect of it. We would save 100 billion gallons of water each year. 100 billion gallons. So in order to make 1 pound of meat, you go to the store, you're like, hey, give me a pound of fresh ground meat. Sweet. For that 1 pound of meat, it took 1,700 gallons of water to use. But for a pound of vegetables, it's only 39 gallons, right? That's wild. Like, water is going to be, if not isn't already, a hot commodity. Like, we going to run out of water at some point, right? We keep like just more. Need. Want. And the reality is that's insane. That 1,700 gallons of water for 1 pound of beef. And again, think of everything that was wasted. And it's impressive to wrap your mind around, right? We would also save about 7 million gallons of gas if you just stopped eating meat for 1 day, every week, for 1 year. And then ultimately, you want to talk about what really is important to people is saving money, right? Saving money at the checkout line. Directly, meat can be expensive. A good meat, can be expensive. But if you're buying more fruits and vegetables, I mean, you can buy a pound of apples for like $2, $2.50 or something. You can buy a pound of vegetables for like $3 type thing. You are going to save money. There's no doubt about it. But indirectly, you're talking about lowering your medical expenses, right? Like, us Americans, $147 billion annually to reduce the incidence of stroke, heart attack, diabetes. That's a lot of moolah when we could be preventing this by just making simple dietary changes. So I'm going to wrap it up, the take home, right? Meat is all not bad. Meat can be good for us, but the processed factory farm meat, it's gone. It's got to go. You need to find a local farmer. If not so local, find something that's farm raised. Do your homework, asking them, what are you putting in the grains? Are they free range, grass fed? Do they get antibiotics? Do they get hormones? They get all these things. Quit buying the store-bought fish, the farm-raised fish. Quit it. Stop. It's junk. It's not worth it. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. Find a local fish supplier. Go out and fish yourself. Go in that direction of knowing that what you buy at the store, is it easy? Yes. Is it right there in front of you? Yes. Does it taste good? Probably. Is it going to help you at all from any health aspect whatsoever? Sure ain't. Like, it's just not giving your body what it needs to function at an optimal level. And again, I know you're going to ask, how can I afford this, right? Danielle, how can I afford this? Stop eating so much meat. Quit buying the meat, because meat in itself is expensive. I promise you, buying more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, all that, you'll see it in your bill. You'll literally see it in your bill. Now, yes, some of these meat alternatives, they can get pricey too. But again, what is the end game for your health? It's super expensive too to spend a night in my ICU, right? Thousands and thousands of dollars just for the bed, not for the physician seeing you, the nursing providing care, the medications that are going in, the procedures that you need to have done. In the end, I promise you, you're going to save. You're going to save in your health. You're going to save literally at the checkout line. It's going to happen. And talking kind of about, plant-based meat options, there's literally over 100 different types of alternative meat options out there now. When I first started as a vegetarian, I was making some funky Vital Wheat gluten ribs in my kitchen. Things were getting a little wild, I'm not gonna lie. And now, like, you can literally go down to your grocery store and I'm not just talking, bean burgers. I'm talking, good plant alternatives that when I sneak them in the food, I don't even have to sneak them anymore because my husband and my kid actually enjoy eating them. You can make any type of meal you wanted out there with the meat substitutes. There's no doubt. And then if you look on the PowerPoint, which I'll link down below, I have tons of like cookbooks, like pictures of the cookbooks that I had to consider. When I first started, I'm a picture person when I was cooking and doing things. And then I'd sit there and I'd be like, okay, I don't even know what this word is, let alone where to find it in the grocery store. For me, these were simple, like home-based comfort food, vegetarian, vegan options that I was like, boom, this is perfect. I can find this stuff in my grocery store, and it was easy to make. So I hope that wasn't too much. I hope everyone who eats meat doesn't think I'm bashing you. I'm not. I'm just telling you and giving you the information to ultimately make the best health choices for you. I know for me, eliminating meat was a big part of my life and taking it into a different trajectory as far as health goes. It may not be for everybody, and that's okay. But if I can get you to understand even just eliminating some meat in an everyday meal, off of your plate, you're not only helping yourself, you're helping the environment, you're helping the animals themselves, the soil, the water aspect, the global warming aspect, all of it. Like truly, you're helping by just eating healthy food. It's kind of a win-win, right? So I hope this wasn't too much. Thank you guys for listening, and be well, friends.